Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Utah Board of Water Resources Board meeting. Today is October 28th, 2021. It is now 10:32 a.m. We're convening this Board of Water Resources Board meeting in Price, Utah today. My name is Blaine Ipson. I'm chairman of the Board of Water Resources this year. Board members present, if you'll each identify yourself, please, starting with Norm.
Norman Johnson from the Southeast area, Upper Colorado River.
Jim Lemon, Lower Colorado River.
Juliet Tennant, Salt Lake and Tooele.
Charles Holmgren, Bear River Basin.
Wayne Anderson, Wasatch, Utah, and Juab counties.
Randy Crozier, Uintah, Duchesne, Daggett County.
Kyle Stevens, Weber River Basin.
Thank you. We have a full quorum of board members present today in person. Recognize the director of the Division of Water Resources, Candace. Candace, would you please introduce staff members and those that you'd like?
Yes. Online, we have Russell Hadley, and then with us, we have Randy Staker, Todd Stonley, Shalane DiBernardi, Marty Bushman, Tom Moore, Michael Sanchez, Joel Williams, Jaqueline Pacheco, Marisa Egbert, Lindsay Russell, and we also have our AV team. Paul Gedge is here, and back in Salt Lake, we have Carmen McDonald and Tom Thompson. So really grateful for them and making this remote board meeting work.
Thank you. Welcome to those who are here in person and those who are attending virtually as well. So the first item on our agenda for today's meeting is approval of the minutes. Board members, you've had a chance to look at the minutes and review them. Are there any comments or questions on those minutes that you have?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make the motion we approve the minutes.
Okay, Jim Lemon has made a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, second to the motion.
Charles Holmgren has seconded the motion. We've had a motion and a second. Before taking a vote on it, is there any further clarification or discussion on the minutes any of you have, board members? Okay, with that, then we will take a vote on it. All in favor of approving the minutes of the last board meetings as written, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next items on our agenda include reviewing projects, that type of thing. Let me just go over a few logistics first on the projects before we get into that. The way it will work is we're in kind of a tight room here, but the first step in as I announce each project one at a time, staff will come up and give a presentation as well as the applicants up here to the front. There's two microphones. If you will, when you have something to say, if you'll speak into the microphone and identify yourself by name, that would be helpful. So staff will give a presentation of the project first, then the applicants will have a chance to say whatever they'd like to. Then there will be a question and answer discussion from the board to the applicant and the staff member. Then we'll ask if there's been any public comments on the particular project. Then the board will discuss it a little more, after which there'll be a motion and a second and then a vote from the board on those they decide to vote on. So again, if you can identify yourself, speak into the mic. You who are participating remotely, virtually, if you've got a smartphone, a *6 mutes and unmutes your phone. If you're on the computer, a Control-D will mute or unmute your phone. So again, please keep your phones or devices muted until it's your turn to talk. So the first item on our agenda is on the road. Their GPS said that they're just a matter of minutes away, Ephraim Irrigation Company. So we're going to bypass them on the order right now. We will rather go directly to project RE 427, Ashley Irrigation Company, which is in Uintah County, and Jaqueline Pacheco is the staff member on that. So let's first identify those from Ashley Irrigation Company who are participating. We can do that. If you'll identify yourself, if you're participating virtually, just identify yourself, please.
Wayne Semper, president of Ashley Central Canal.
Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you. And I think I might be the only one. The engineer was planning on it, but he got in an emergency situation and texted me, said he can't make it, so.
Okay. Well, we look forward to hearing from you in just a minute, Wayne. Thank you. So, Jaqueline?
Ashley Central Canal is open and aligned. It is approximately 9.6 miles long and over 100 years old. A seepage loss study in 2017 showed that the canal loses nearly 6,000 acre-feet of water. The board authorized and committed funds to this to the applicant's project in August 8, 2019 and August 6, 2020 meetings respectively. The purpose of that project was to pipe approximately 2.4 miles of canal, and they received a $900,000 WaterSmart grant to cover that portion as they were pursuing funding for the entire canal. They declined the WaterSmart grant funding in favor of funding the entire 9.6 mile project through NRCS and other grants. The Ashley Central Canal will be piped and partially pressurized. The piping will reduce high seepage losses and pressurization of the system will facilitate the conversion of users from flood irrigation to sprinkler irrigation, but the sprinkler irrigation is not part of this project. As you can see on the map, the portion that's in blue is what the original 2.4 miles project was that the board authorized and committed funds to, and then the dotted red line includes the entire project. Next slide, please. So the original project was $2.1 million, and the board's portion was going to be $1 million. For this entire project, it's $13,057,000, and they've received a lot of grants, as you can see the breakdown on the screen. But the board's portion will not change. It'll still be for $1 million, but it'll be 7.7% of the overall project. Staff recommends the board recommit 7.7% of the project cost up to $1 million, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $40,000. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Jaqueline. Wayne, do you have anything you would like to add regarding this project?
No, I just appreciate you guys looking at this for us, and sorry it's taken us so long, but we've been going through quite a process with the environmental stuff and switching from Board of Water Resources to the NRCS grant and all that stuff. But it seems like we're moving in the right direction. We got a lot better project now than what we had to begin with. And so just appreciate your guys' looking at this.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Board members, do you have any questions for either Jaqueline or Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle Stevens. Wayne, I was just curious as to why the WaterSmart grant for $900,000 was dropped. Was that not able to be applied with the larger project, or what was the rationale behind that?
The WaterSmart grant was just a 50% match, where the NRCS grant was a 75% match. And so it was just it saved us quite a bit of money going that route. Originally, when we started the project, we was under the understanding that the WaterSmart grant would be able to be applied as a match towards the NRCS grant. But as we moved through the process, we found out that wasn't the case. And so because of that reason, we decided it was better off just to go with a straight NRCS grant than it was to receive the WaterSmart grant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, board members, any other questions for either Wayne or Jaqueline? Okay. I visited with Randy Staker, and there were no public comments received electronically regarding this project. Does anyone present here today have any public comments on this project? Okay, there were no public comments received on this then. Okay, board members, any further discussion you have on this? Any questions, clarifications?
No, I'd just like to add that this will be a great project and will help address a lot of issues in the future getting this enclosed. It's a good project.
Okay, any other discussion, board members? Okay, doesn't appear like there's any more discussion, so with that, we'll entertain a motion on this project.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board recommit 7.7% of the project costs up to $1 million and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $40,000.
Okay, we have a motion from Randy. Do we have a second on Randy's motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Norm seconded the motion. Okay, prior to taking a vote on this motion, any further discussion, clarification needed on the motion? Okay, we'll take a vote on this then, on Randy's motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Wayne. Good luck on your project. Thanks,
Thank you
Jaqueline.
guys very much.
Okay, we'll go now on our agenda to project RE061, RE352, RE361, Ephraim Irrigation Company, which is in Sanpete County, and Marisa is our project manager from staff on it. And Mike Larson is here today. Welcome, Mike. Okay, so again, Mike, the order that we'll do this is we'll have a staff presentation from Marisa, and then we'll invite you to give any comments you'd like to, and then the board will have questions, answers for you and Marisa, and then after that they'll have a discussion, and then go from there. So, Marisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The main project is located on the east side of Ephraim with a tunnel going from Emery County over to Sanpete County. And then the other two projects that are in this as well, in part of the discussion, are in and around Ephraim City as pressurized irrigation system projects. In February 2016 and in October 2017, the board committed $2.155 million for the applicant to do an extensive rehabilitation project on their tunnel, the Ephraim Tunnel, including removing rubble and debris and installing a 54-inch steel pipe. It was anticipated that it would take just a couple years, a couple of construction seasons to finish this. There were many delays, many difficulties, weather issues, and it ended up taking 4 construction seasons plus additional work has had to be done since then. At the time, and the contractor then submitted a claim for $1.4 million for overruns, which the company rejected. They did try to go through mediation. That did not work out. The company continued to work with the contractor on things, and they've come up with a $400,000 settlement for the company to pay the contractor to complete any obligations between the two. And so the difficulty is trying to come up with that kind of money for a project like this. The company's also making repayments on these other two projects. And so between the settlement agreement, associated attorney fees, and the extensive drought conditions that are in this area, and not to mention that there are shareholders that are making repayments on all three, or part of the repayments on all three of these projects. And so with the drought, it's made it even more difficult. The company's requested their repayments be deferred for all three of these projects to allow them to pay the settlement costs. They've requested the deferment payments in 2021 for principal payments, 2021, 2022, 2023. They have also requested late fees be waived and repayment for RE361, which is known as the Gobblefield pipeline project that started soon, about the same time as the tunnel rehabilitation. They have requested that be extended from a 16-year agreement for repayments to 20 years. Currently, the principal balance for all three projects is do I have that wrong up there, Shalane? $4.27 million. That's right. Okay, the total of what the board has committed. That's the total of what the board has committed for the three projects. And so 2 of these projects have a 1% interest. The one in discussion with the tunnel rehab has a 2% interest. So what staff is recommending is the board amend all three of these purchase agreements to state that the principal payments will be deferred for 2021, 2022, and 2023, and then will resume on March 1st, 2024. Interest payments will be due on all three of these on March 1st of 2021, 2022, and 2023. Staff also recommends the board amend the purchase agreement for RE 361, the Gobblefield project, to state that the balance owed will be returned over approximately 18 years, and the difference is the two payments have already been made, over approximately 18 years with annual payments of $62,500. The interest rate will remain as contracted, and that is staff's report.
Thank you, Marisa. Michael, what would you like to add?
We pretty well agree with what the staff's recommending. I think if we can get that, we can make it work. The contractor was really difficult. We had a terrible time with the contractor. He's, for lack of a better word, kind of being arrogant with us a little bit over the whole thing, but we have got this agreement. I think it's a good agreement. The other offer is just to go to court. That's the point we're at. And we've spent quite a bit of money on legal fees and on engineering fees now trying to get to this point. So I believe if we can get the recommendation passed, that'll work for us.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Board members, any questions for Marisa or Michael? Kyle?
I just have a question relative to the recommendation where it says interest payments will be due on March 1, 2021. We're already past that date. Does that present a problem?
No, we can work it out.
Okay.
Shalane indicated that we can work that out.
Okay, any other questions?
Norm? Norman Johnson. I had a question relating to your relationship with Ephraim City. Where do they come in this?
On the tunnel portion of this, Ephraim City has an agreement with Ephraim Irrigation to pay half of the cost. So they will pay half of the payment on just the tunnel loan or anything to do with the tunnel. They've been kind enough to help us out on their legal part of it. We didn't really have an agreement with them on that, but they have helped us out. So they're very involved. They generate power off the water that comes through the tunnel. They have a culinary pipeline that goes through our tunnel, and that's a large share of their culinary water. So they're very interested and very involved in that aspect of it.
Further questions, board members?
Do you have, the agreement, is it written? Do you have, do you have confidence in the agreement? Okay, perfect, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, thank you, Marisa and Michael. Board members, any further discussion before we entertain a motion on this project? Okay, we'll entertain a motion on this project then.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Lemon, I would make the motion that the board amend all three purchase agreements to state that the principal payments will be deferred for 2021, 2022, and 2023, and will resume on March 1st, 2024. The interest payments will be due on March 1st of 2021, 2022, and 2023. Also, that the board amend the purchase agreement for RE 361 to state that the balance owed will be returned over approximately 18 years with annual payments of $62,500. The interest rate will remain as contracted.
Thank you, Jim. We have a motion from Jim. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Jim, second by Wayne. Prior to taking a vote, any further discussion or clarification on the motion or the project? Okay, with that then, we'll take a vote on this motion as made. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. So hopefully that will help Michael and get things going along there. I know that's been a long process for you guys.
It's working right now, so I'm glad it's in.
That's good to hear.
Good to be done.
Okay.
Anyway, I appreciate the help.
Okay, thanks, Mike, and Marisa, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda will be project RA 440. It's Nibley Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company, and Russell Hadley is participating virtually. And we also have virtually participating, it'd be Jay Tuddenham, is that pronounced correctly? Are you with us, Jay?
Yes, that's correct.
Whoa.
Okay, Jay, you apparently must have a computer connection and a phone connection. If you can turn the speakers off on one of them, it just gave a lot of feedback, but if you can turn your speakers off on the computer or on your phone, one or the other.
There we go.
Okay, are you there this time?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, Jay, why don't you introduce who the other gentlemen that are with you, please?
We have Jim Zollinger and Jim Jensen.
Okay, welcome, Sid and Jim. Welcome today. The way that this will proceed is first we'll have a staff presentation by Russell Hadley, and then we'll ask you as the applicant, Jay, to if you have anything to add, and then we'll have questions and answers and go from there. So, Russell?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, actually from the company, we have Sid Zollinger, the president, the secretary, Jay Tuddenham, a board member, Jim Jensen, and the engineer, Stephen Wood from Sunrise Engineering. Okay, Nibley Blacksmith Fork. This project is located in Nibley City in Cache County. The applicant serves about 3,100 acres of agricultural land on 181 homes, lawn and garden water, with water diverted from the Blacksmith Fork River. In August 2020, the board authorized financial assistance for a project to pipe 2,200 feet of canal with 36-inch pipe and upgrade the headworks at the Blacksmith Fork River diversion. Since that time, Trout Unlimited and the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources have proposed constructing the new diversion on the river to create a more fish-friendly diversion incorporating fish ladders. The diversion will be paid for completely by Trout Unlimited and Wildlife Resources with a Watershed Restoration Initiative grant. Therefore, the cost of the diversion has been removed from the project. During the design phase, it was decided that the pipe size should be increased to 42-inch and that a traveling electric screen be installed instead of a stationary mesh screen. The plans and specifications have been completed. The project was recently bid, and bids came in double the original estimates. Also, a water optimization grant has been obtained from the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food in the amount of $150,000 for the canal piping portion. The authorized and proposed recommended cost sharing and repayments are, here's a, Shalane, could you go back a slide? This is the canal we're talking about. You can see it's going to be very expensive and a lot of trouble to get into those backyards to do this work, to get this pipeline in. That's one of the reasons it came in a lot higher than expected, but of course we increased the pipe size and added a traveling screen to the project as well. Okay, authorized and proposed cost sharing. The project cost has increased. Total is now $1,380,000. The board's cost share, representing 85% of the non-grant amount, would be $768,000. A Water Smart grant for $270,000. and a water optimization grant for $150,000. And the applicant would provide $192,000 for total cost $1,380,000. The board authorized 53.9% of the project cost from the C&D fund up to $442,000 to be purchased at 0.15% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $22,500. With this new amount, totals and grant amounts, staff recommends the board reauthorize and commit 55.7% of the project cost in the revolving construction fund up to $768,000, and that the project be purchased 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $25,600. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Russell. Representatives of Nibley, Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company, either Sid or Jay or Jim or Stephen, any of you like to add anything to what Russell's given? And if you'd identify yourself, if you have anything to say, that would be appreciated.
Jay Tottenham. The big reason to drive this project is the buildings that's gone around it. The north side of that slide that was there, it goes off downhill drastically, and the canal bank is very fragile, and it's a real, it's just a problem, especially the screen there that you saw at the end. If it plugs up, it could flood the houses below. And that's been one of our main concerns, is the problems with the public that could possibly happen with flooding. It's just a dangerous project through there with all of the housing that's been built up around it. The canal is probably 100 years old, and the city's just growing around it. And it causes us problems.
We're excited to see this liability go away. Sorry, this is Stephen, I'm their engineer, but we're excited to see this liability go away and the water that's being lost in this gravelly area to be conserved. And like Jay said, that's the driving concern right now, is both that safety recognition, as well as there is quite a bit of water loss that's lost. It's a gravel basin right there, and so we'll have more water available for the shareholders, as well as it's just removes the greatest thing that keeps us up at night. So we're excited to see it go, and we're grateful for your support in helping us.
Thank you. Board members, any questions for either Russell or any of the members of the irrigation company?
Mr. Chairman, this is Charles Holmgren. I was with Russell when we toured the project site, and back then Paul Wishman was still with us. I believe he's passed away since we did that initial review of the project site. One thing that quite impressed me was how dangerous your diversion structure was, and apparently you're getting some help from Fish and Wildlife and Trout Unlimited. Is that going to improve your safety and your ability to divert water, Jay? Or
yes, it's a safety concern when we have to put the boards and whatnot into the river there. It's dangerous.
Okay. Another thing we discussed a little bit here was, do you have a acreage number for how many acres you're irrigating residentially versus your total irrigation?
Well, the majority is agriculture, but I don't know how many acres.
Acre-wise, I'm not sure, but out of the 2,400 shares, only about 25 or 30 are residential. And we have spoken with a couple of their representatives, and they understand that the agricultural comes first, and if anything happens, they're the first ones to get shut off. So, yeah, we've been pretty clear.
Yeah, and when we were doing the tour, I remember we discussed potentially the water conservation program of not irrigating during the heat of the day, but it didn't work for your operation, that it created quite a bit of confusion and mismanagement if you shut off during the heat of the day, didn't it?
Yes. When the water's there, you have to use it. It's not like it's on a reservoir where you turn the spigot on and off.
Thank you, gentlemen and Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the applicant or Russell?
I could add that they said about 25 shares are used for lawn and garden water. You get to irrigate 1 acre per share. So I guess they were figuring about 25 acres of lawn was being irrigated. And when I just went to Google Maps and looked at that area a while ago, I think 25 acres sounds about right. So you're talking about 25 acres of lawn and garden water and 3,100 acres of agriculture. So it's a real small percentage of the total irrigated acreage.
Any further questions, board members? Now, with this project, I visited with Randy Staker, and we did not receive any public comment on this particular project. Does anyone present in today's meeting here in person have any comments on it? Okay, with that, board members, any further discussion you want to have before entertaining a motion? Okay, we'll entertain a motion on this project then.
Mr. Chairman, this is Charles Holmgren. I will make the motion the board reauthorize and commit 55.7% of the project cost from the revolving construction fund up to $768,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $25,600.
Okay, we have a motion from Charles. Do we have a second on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, Kyle Stevens, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before taking a vote, any further discussion or clarification needed on it? Okay, all in favor of the motion as given, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion appears to be unanimous. All present voted for it. Congratulations on your project. Good luck with it.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, I neglected to mention, but back on Ephraim Irrigation Company, I neglected to mention that there were no public comments received on that particular motion. Did anyone present have any comments on it? Going back one presentation on Ephraim, did any of you have any comments on it? Okay, so if it can be noted that there were no public comments on Ephraim Irrigation Companies as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is project RE 452, Linden City, and Marisa is a staff member, and then we have Adam Cowie, city administrator, and we have Ron Clegg, engineer, and Juan Garrido, public works director, and Van Broderick, Linden City Council. So welcome to each of you. And Marisa, if you can give us a staff presentation first, please.
Sure. And I let Juan and Adam know they needed to sit in the hot seats up here. So, so Linden City provides drinking water and secondary water within city limits, and they're just under 3,000 residential connections. About 250 of those already are metered already have secondary meters on them as a new development. And that new development, if you see the red line cutting through, that is I-15, that funky flagship block there in kind of yellow, that is the newer development. And that development brought, as we discussed a little in the briefing meeting, that brought the secondary line over to that area. And if you look just to the, Juan, there we go. Oh, is that, yeah, that's the line. And then show the area where it's not metered, but on the, or not on the system. Yeah, so that area, yeah, that area is not on the system, but now they have that line coming across from the new development one, to make sure they had that in to have secondary water. Those are the ones, that's the 250 or so that aren't on the system. But there are plans to work on that. Yeah. So there's also just about 180 commercial, 7 institutional, and 185 industrial connections. So the purpose of the project is to install about 2,600 meters, and that's not just residential. There will be commercial, and as you can see some of the sizes of these meters, there's going to be large fields as well. So this is a great project. It's including more than just the residential. With the meter installation, they expect to see as much as possibly 30% reduction, which we've seen in many other through water districts and cities that have installed secondary metering. And they also expect that their operation and maintenance costs will go down by about $70,000. And just kind of a preliminary amount, they were looking at just about 1,100 acre feet or more is, a little bit more of a conservative of what would be saved annually on this change. There's a little bit more here in the report talking about the city passing an ordinance. I'm going to let Adam discuss that. It's a little bit different than the way I had worded it, and also the discussion about it. They're going to do a 2-year data acquisition and kind of make sure how things are going. And it's important to note that one of the requirements will be that they have to report this usage to Division of Water Rights, and so that will be part of that. So the following cost estimate. Most of it is in, there's a lot of it's in meters. There's almost $2 million just in meter installation, and that's just going off an average cost of the different size of meters. The total construction cost is just over $2.7 million. And total cost at just over $2.8 million. So this is that one of the new grants that's coming through this through the state funding that the legislature has committed $2 million each year ongoing for this grant program, where the Board of Water Resources participates in 50% of the money that's coming between the city and between the board. So there is a grant from Central Utah for $400,000. We subtract that out of the total and take the 50% for the city, 50% for the Board of Water Resources. And this is based on those guidelines that were passed by the board at the last board meeting, because this is new legislation and new work. Staff recommends the board authorize and commit 42.9% of the project cost, up to $1,205,000, as a secondary meter grant. Linden City has indicated that they may need to return to the board at a later date to request non-grant funding for their part of the cost share. And so they've been working on that, just making sure that they can come up with that 1.2 million, but we've discussed with them that they could come back and get funding for that in a different way, not non-grant. Okay, and that is staff's report.
Thank you, Marisa. Okay, Linden City, what have you got that you'd like to add? And if you can identify your name too while you're doing it.
Adam Cowie, I'm the Linden City Administrator, and Juan Garrido, again, our Public Works Director. We appreciate Ron Clegg is our consulting engineer and has helped us with this grant, and a Linden resident. And Van Broderick, our City Council member, he serves on multiple water and canal irrigation boards on behalf of the city, and a very experienced and knowledgeable City Council member in the water field. We appreciate his guidance. Linden City developed its pressure irrigation system in 1993, and we had some great foresight by our council and elected officials 30 years ago to install a secondary system in a very urbanized area. We border Orem on the south and Pleasant Grove on the north, and some of those other communities in Utah County don't have secondary and are envious of that. In 2016, it was mentioned that development out on the west side of Linden, we saw the writing on the wall and wanted to make sure that we were good stewards with our secondary water resources. And we actually required by an agreement that development, it's an Ivory Homes development, that they installed secondary meters as part of their project. And they had an 8 to 10 year phased plan to build that out, and they're 50% through that. And so at build out, that will equate to about a third of our city's population. So a fairly dense area for Lindon. And then we have the remaining areas there just to the right side of the gray color, that most of those properties do not have a secondary meter. So we do not have data on how much every residential unit or commercial unit is using. We know our approximate total inflow, but data is powerful, and we can't measure, or we can't, what's the phrase? We can't improve what we can't measure, right? So there's that aspect to it, but also the conservation aspect. Our city council is very conscious of our water resources and wants to be good stewards. So we're excited for this grant. I did want to just make a couple clarifications on the mention of an ordinance. We have adopted and required these meters in this new area, but we haven't actually put that into our ordinance for it to be done citywide. The state did require new construction last April to be done, and so we've reflected that in our development standards, but plan to update our ordinance and make sure that that's there as necessary. And then some good news for us. The stars have aligned on this grant. With the federal ARPA funds that were delivered to cities, we have sufficient to cover our match without need to come back to the board in the future for a loan. And so we will be able to meet that match through those ARPA funds, and that's the American Rescue Plan Act. So won't have an interest or anything to worry about there. That's a great selling point for our residents, that we can bring secondary metering to them without having to raise rates or fees. And so a very good project. I think, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think with that 2-year time that we're going to have to educate the public on what the consumption of water is and how to make them water-wise underused. So I'm just excited as well to be part of this pioneering project from the state on that grant. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any
Mr. Chairman,
questions?
could I just get a clarification a little bit?
Sure.
We've got our cost share. So the cost share, Jaqueline, do we have it? I didn't. So is there additional grant money coming in from ARPA?
No, that is money that is already been provided to the city, and it is earmarked
Oh,
by
okay.
the federal government that we can only utilize those funds for sewer and water projects. And so
Okay.
this fits in that bucket, and so it is in our accounts.
Okay.
And we have not earmarked it for any specific water project. This is what we had in mind.
Okay.
So
All right.
it is Linden City's.
Yeah,
money.
city's funds. Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions?
I can't help myself. I just have a comment. Thank you for being so forward thinking. I know I'm an economist and a demographer, and so I watch where the population growth is happening, and I'm seeing it, really happen in your area. And so I'm so thrilled that you're, looking ahead, and you've put these plans in place already, and now we're executing on some of them. So thank you.
And I think it's a pretty straightforward project. I mean, it is what it is, and it will accomplish a lot of good, and more power to you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, on this particular one, I visited with Randy Staker, and there were no public. Oh, I thought I had it turned on. I'm sorry. I'll repeat what I just said then. I visited with Randy Staker, and there were no public comments received electronically on this. Are there any comments from anyone present today on this particular project? Okay, no public comments received then. Okay, board members, any further discussion on this project before we entertain a motion? Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion on this project.
I move the board authorize and commit 0.9% of the project cost up to $1,205,000
as a secondary meter grant.
Okay, we had a motion from Wayne. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second to the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a second from the motion from Charles. Prior to taking a vote, any further discussion or clarification needed on this? Okay, with that, then we'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Marisa.
Could I just add, this is the first of the projects from this $2 million that the legislature set aside for this. We're excited about that. They are excited. And so we're looking forward to a potential press release about this. So this is just great things that are happening to try to find other ways to save water for this growing population.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to just recognize a couple that are present today. Jay Humphrey, welcome, Jay. Always good to see Jay. Jay and I go way back, a long time. He's manager of the Emery County Water Conservancy District, and Craig Johansson, welcome, Craig. And Craig and I go way back too. Craig was a board member for 8 years of this board, and appreciate having both of you there. We have several other here that we'll recognize in a little bit here, but for now we wanted to recognize Jay and Craig. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a report on the Lake Powell pipeline. Joel, if you can give us an update report on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see, before we jump into Joel, just want to note that on our agenda, it reflects that we did receive 2 new applications, RE 453 from Huntsville South Bench Canal Company in Weber County, and RE 454 from West Cache Irrigation Company in Cache County. And we're not taking any action. Those are just new applications just for an informational purpose. We'll be hearing more about those in the future. So with that, Joel.
Thank you. I'll give you a quick update on the Lake Powell Pipeline project. We are continuing to meet and work with federal partners and with the project team. You will see when we get to the timeline slide that I think you've sensed that there's some uncertainty creeping in, partly due to the hydrology that we're facing right now with Colorado River and elevations in Lake Powell and Lake Mead. The Bureau of Reclamation, their modelers that have been helping with this project have been dedicated to focus on this drought and helping the whole region work on modeling efforts of how to deal with this drought. And so their focus, has rightly been diverted to that. Some of the focus also of project partners and the others that we're working with is being focused on the drought right now. So some of the modeling that needs to be done for the next round of this environmental impact statement, that has now been pushed back a little bit. So some of the key efforts that are underway, obviously Reclamation is still working on preparing a supplement to their draft environmental impact statement that came out in 2020. And we had those comments and they're working on addressing those. There will be several improvements from what we hear to this next draft that will come out. The question is when will it come out? We don't know. The water rights change application, we know that the state engineer is reviewing that, and we at any moment could have a decision from them on that change application. The discussions are ongoing with the Basin states to discuss their thoughts and to discuss the project, and I think also it's part of this bigger discussion of just the Colorado River in general, of coming up with solutions during this difficult time. The remaining items, the Army Corps, Fish and Wildlife, and then obviously that Reclamation Section 14 agreement, those are all things that are also in the background continuing and will be a part of this process as we go forward. If we could look at the next slide. This is where you'll probably notice the changes. I think if we went back several months, there was a time when we had specific months of when we expected these items to occur. And then we went to maybe fall of this year or spring of this year. And now, as you can see, we have no dates whatsoever. And that is probably the most accurate way that we can present this at this point, just because of the level of uncertainty that we're seeing. And so once we do have better information from the Bureau of Reclamation, we will be able to say, oh, this is when the anticipated timeline for the next draft to come out, and comments, and then the final. And then we'll be able to put those other dates in as we look at the final design. But right now, again, things are kind of being dominated by the drought. The next slide, I think, talks a little bit about the contracts. Because things have slowed down a little bit, the contracts, the budgets are looking pretty good as far as we've got enough money to get us through this year and next year with the Stantec contract, with that last amendment that the board completed and approved. There is remaining funds as well for Bureau of Reclamation and with the Bureau of Land Management. So for now, I don't anticipate an immediate request for additional funds for any of those contracts, but once the work picks up, again, we probably will come back, especially for Reclamation and BLM, to get them additional funds to cover their work. But for now, things are looking good. That's kind of my update. Are there questions?
Mr. Chair, could I just add one thing? Candace Hassenjaeger, thanks, Joel, for your report. I think with this uncertainty, it's important to note that Washington County Water Conservancy District is really aggressively pursuing conservation measures, working with cities to implement water efficiency ordinances. And so they're really looking to that to kind of make up for, not lost time, but as part of their water strategy.
Yeah, that's a great point, Candace. Using this time to focus on what they can do right now, knowing that there is a need for additional water, but saying, what can we do right now to reduce that need by extending these conservation efforts? So.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Board members, any questions from Joel on his report, on his update? Okay, now we're not taking any board action. We just appreciate your update, Joel. Thank you very much. And I visited with Randy Staker, and your draft was published in the thing, so there were no comments received electronically on your information. Anybody here have any comments on the information Joel presented? Okay, thank you, Joel. Okay, next item on our agenda is a water banking report. And prior to doing that, let me introduce, looks like come on up, Emily, Jaqueline. It looks like there's quite a few here for this particular topic. Of course, we have Emily Lewis, who's the water banking project manager. Welcome, Emily. And Nathan Bracken from Smith, Hartfitz. Anyway, Smith. Okay, welcome, Nathan. We've got Jordan Nielsen as project manager with Trout Unlimited. Jordan, there you are. I couldn't see you. Okay, Sue Bellagamba from Canyonlands, regional director of the Nature Conservancy. Welcome, Sue. Kevin Cotner, president of Carbon Canal Company. Ryan Jones is a resource coordinator with the Utah Department of Ag and Food. Welcome, Ryan. Bill Butcher, right? Yeah, and he's with Price River Water Conservancy District. What? You know, I'm going to have.
And Price River Water Users Association.
Right. You know, this has been nostalgic to me. I mentioned it in the briefing meeting, but when I graduated from college in civil engineering back in 1983, my first job was right here in Price. I worked with the Utah Division of Water Rights here out of the Price office. I worked here from 83 to 89. So everything we talked about, did yesterday as far as the tour, it was so nostalgic. Last night I went and took pictures and texted them home to my wife, who wasn't able to come over, of the first apartment we lived in. I graduated from college, got married, and started my first job here in Price in a 1-week span back in 1983. But this is really nostalgic to me. And back then it was Price River Water Users Association was the name of, and that it's changed through the years. But
Still Price River Water Users Association.
you still have that.
That's still the reservoir.
That's still the reservoir water.
That's one hat I wear.
That's one hat of the many. Anyway, this has been so nostalgic for me, and it has felt like a homecoming, and I'm so grateful that decided to have the board meeting over here. For me, it's been really, really rewarding. And we have Jake Pressett, Vice Chair of Price River. Jake. And we have Dale Wilson, board member of Price River. Okay. Welcome all of you. And with that, we will have a water banking report. Emily, and go for it.
All right. I'm Emily Lewis with the law firm of Clydestone Session, operating as the Utah Water Banking Project Manager. I would just like to note for the record, the long list of attendees you just noted is a good example of why the pace of this project is the pace of this project. But we're really thankful for everyone here, and it's been really a fantastic project to work on, especially in the last couple of weeks. Things are seeing it all come together, and so it's been really great. Okay. So today, this is our third or fourth time before the Board of Water Resources, and so today's presentation is kind of a focused presentation. Yep. So basically, the purpose for our conversation today is I'm going to give an exceptionally brief overview of the broader project for anyone in the audience who's new to the project. But mostly, I want to focus a little bit on our first pilot project bank, which is the Price River Water Bank, and just go over briefly the provisions that the parties have come to in their draft agreement. We are still working on through some final details, but I think the parties are going to be ready to move ahead with some time here in the next couple weeks. Again, the pace is all at the water user level, so we want to let everybody feel comfortable. The second item that is kind of for public information I think would be helpful is the draft application and proposed application process. We have some forms for the board that we have submitted. And then I'm here to answer any questions as well about the project to date. So just again, kind of what is the water banking project? Some of you have seen this slide before, and I appreciate your patience. But like in a nutshell, what is the water banking project intended to do and the water banking statute here in Utah? And it's promoting the development of market tools favorable to local water users. Really, the goal is to maintain local control over water market and leasing activity and provide some additional tools to local water users. Our activities are part of a broader project. It is a statewide water marketing strategies report. The Utah Division of Water Resources received $800,000 to conduct 3 pilot projects to test the Utah Water Banking Act. And then at the end of the 3 years, our goal is to create some materials and a statewide water marketing report that is intended to summarize our findings, but more importantly, help local water users use the Act and understand how to effectively and efficiently and economically participate under the statute. I just love this slide, and it will always be in all of my presentations. But really, this project is a pretty fascinating project. So the lady on the one side is balancing 5 plates. That is how I feel about things. The Olympic rings, which are really there just supposed to represent 5 circles of circus. This project is a simultaneous conversation in 5 active spheres. We have 3 active pilot projects, 1 here in Price, 1 in the Snyderville Basin, and 1 in Cache Valley. So we're having simultaneous discussions about creating water banks that are suited to those local conditions in each of those 3 areas. We are simultaneously also having discussions with our state agency partners, who are the Board of Water Resources and the Division of Water Rights. So it's a lot of activity all happening to try and coalesce together on an informed and hopefully useful process. There probably should be a 6th, oh, there's a 6th plate, good. A 6th point of discussion is that we also have an active working group of interested stakeholders that is a working body that has been very helpful the last couple weeks in giving us kind of the brain trust of the water user community. And the other thing I just want to mention, and I think this comes across very quickly, is the guinea pig. because we are making this from whole cloth. This is a new process that has yet to be molded here in the state of Utah. Okay. So one more quick slide on the project in general. This is a 3-year project. We started in July 1, 2020. So we'll be going into we're in our 2nd year here, or soon to be. We are kind of concluding the pilot project development in the price and cash area. We're coming very close to contracts in both of those areas. And we are in the middle of discussions in Snyderville Basin to create a statutory bank, which is a little different and distinct from the contract bank discussion that we'll be having today. But I think we're on track. I think we're making very good progress. It's a lot of moving parties, it's a lot of moving parts, but slowly but surely we are getting there. Okay. And then, so really what we're here to talk about today is the Price River Pilot Study Area. Again, these are exploratory discussions. We're getting very close to having a signed contract, but yet, we want to give everyone time to feel comfortable that the arrangement made is something that suits their needs. But the basic concept is a contract bank designed to allow Carbon Canal Company shareholders to fallow land and lease the consumptive portion of their company shares. So it's a water leasing program. There are numerous participating parties, Carbon Canal Company, Price River Water Users Association, the Nature Conservancy, Trout Unlimited, the Division of Wildlife Resources, and Price River Watershed Conservation District is acting as the bank applicant. And under the statute, the bank applicant needs to be a public entity. And you'll see here this picture. If you go back one there, the second, Shalane. This is kind of a map of the proposed service area, basically kind of starting up at the beginning of the Carbon Canal Company system at the Schofield Reservoir outlet into the Carbon Canal Company system. Those are the place of use for Carbon Canal Company shareholders and authorized place of use for the irrigation company. This includes Marcine Wash, which is a collaborative project between the Nature Conservancy, Division of Wildlife Resources, and then the big area extends to the Woodside Gauge. So it's a map of kind of where we're thinking about our bank service area being.
How many acres are under that?
This is Wayne Anderson. How many acres are under that irrigation system?
I think you have 11,000, Kevin, how irrigated?
8,500 and 10,500.
Okay.
Somewhere, depending on year.
Okay. 8,500 to 10,500. Okay. So that was a little high. So the service area is, like I said, the Carbon Canal Company delivery area, the Marcine Watch Reservoir, and then the lower Price River to Woodside Gauge. These are a couple key contract provisions that the parties have come to. Again, we are still finalizing some of the details of the contract, but these are some general terms that the group has agreed to basically organize the leasing structure. And so the way that the banking leasing structure is going to work is that there is going to be a water bank that's going to be administered by a six-member committee that is going to have an appointee of each of the parties. There is going to be a bank manager. Carbon Canal Company is going to act as the bank manager to manage the water bank. They're going to appoint an employee who's going to actually be the person who manages the activities of the bank. Such duties include distributing forms, overseeing the depositing of leased shares, coordinating with the districts on financing and reporting. And then the manager is also responsible for the verification of farm activities and accounting. So there's going to be one person who's going to be in charge of kind of the nitty-gritty responsibilities of making sure that this bank occurs. And then they're going to coordinate with the Price River Watershed Conservation District as the applicant to comply with the statutory requirements. And so that's some accounting requirements, both on money and water distribution. The bank operating costs are basically going to be, the committee is going to collect a 10% right now, that's the amount that we're discussing, of the annual lease price for each lease to be held in a district operating account. and they're going to pay the manager and the participating lessors from that operating account. So the parties have kind of gotten together, figure out how they're going to internally govern these transactions, who's going to be responsible for what, and also have discussed the financial elements of the leasing, financial administration of the lease. So presently, the working leasing process for the contract is going to work as follows. On December 1, the manager is going to send the shareholders an interest statement, which is basically shareholders in the company are going to indicate the number of shares they're willing to lease or deposit into the bank, the acres they wish to fallow, and they're going to suggest a lease price. I forgot the key term. The shareholder will accept for leasing. By January 1, the manager is going to prepare a summary of the interest statements. On January 15th, the leasing entities are going to determine an annual lease price. By February 1, the shareholders will submit a deposit form that basically says, hey, this lease price is something that we are, this is acceptable to us, and we want a lease for the year. And then Carbon Canal Company and Price Over Water users, the water right owners themselves, will review and approve the deposit form. If the company approves the form, they're basically going to endorse it, and that's going to equal depositing those shares on the interest or on the deposit form into the bank. So basically, this is the gatekeeper of how. Yes, please.
This is Blaine. Just a quick question. Yesterday, I think it was asked on our tour, but I wasn't clear with the answer with it. Is it going to be an annual lease, or is it going to be longer term lease type thing? I mean, I do remember the discussion was if you're going to take alfalfa out, it needs to be longer term with the replanting and all of that kind of stuff. But it's probably neither here nor there for the purpose of this meeting. But I'm curious. I didn't feel like I got a clear-cut answer on what was it. Is this going to be each and every year proposed, or do we know? Or
this process is the yearly process, but in terms of the length of lease contracts, I actually don't know because I'm not a negotiating party. What was our? Did we come to a conclusion on that?
I think it's flexible. I think we follow the annual lease.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to do a longer lease, they can.
Oh.
Sorry. Nathan Bracken, one of the attorneys working on this. It's flexible. This is an annual process that the bank would follow, but if a shareholder wanted to lease it for 1 year, they could. If they wanted to lease it for more, they could as well.
That's still part of our negotiation right now. I guess that's probably one of the reasons we're not going to prepare to sign it as Carbon Canal today. That needs to be flexible. We're not trying to prohibit anybody from participating in it. Some of us may want 3 years, some may want 2. We have people that want, split season right now, which we're not prepared for yet because of all the logistics of keeping track of it right now. We need to get this first step behind us, and then we can move on to this more intricate part of the deal.
Okay. If you could just identify yourself for Lindsay for the purposes.
Okay. Kevin Cotner, Carbon Canal. Okay.
And as the project manager, I've been not involved in the negotiations between the parties. Those are between the parties. But my understanding, too, is the role of the committee is to have some annual flexibility and have the group meet to kind of also flesh out those questions as they come up. Yeah. Which I think is a really good forum to do so. And so that February 1st deposit form is really kind of okay, we've got an idea of who's interested. We've got a lease price, and now we're going to opt in to actually determining whether or to signify and indicate that those shares are available for lease. The next step in the process is February 21st. The manager is going to inform the leasing entities, so now these are TNC, Trout Unlimited, and Wildlife Resources when they choose to participate, of the number of shares available for lease. So we've had X number of shareholders indicate they want to participate at the annual lease price, and now they're making the water available to the potential leasing parties. And then on March 1st, The leasing entities will inform Carbon Canal Company and Price River water users of the number of shares that they're interested in leasing. So we could have 100 shares in the lease pool, but the leasing parties only want to lease 80. They'll indicate that. The leasing parties will provide a proposed delivery point for the annual lease shares, and the parties will execute a lease for the annual lease shares. And again, we still have some technical matters we're figuring out, so that might be an annual lease or it might be a multi-year lease if that's what the parties so desire. One thing though that we want to make sure too is that the lease amount, the actual wet water quantity delivered under the lease is also subject to availability. So the leasing entities are going to be on the same footing as the shareholders that have this, you know, if water's not available to shareholders, it's not going to be available to the leasing entities. So it's proportional as if they were a shareholder. By the irrigation, start of the irrigation season, the manager will notify any shareholder or depositor whose shares were not leased, so that that shareholder can use their shares as before. So kind of an indicator that, you know, no one's water is going to go unused if they don't want to that year. So that's the working framework for how we're going to get the parties together to actually like transact the lease between lessors and lessees at the kind of beginning of the year in the early water and before the water year starts. The goal is to then run water through the irrigation season, and then in November, the committee and the manager will get together and start preparing some of their reporting that's necessary and required for the Board of Water Resources. And then by December 15th, the depositor or the shareholder is going to receive their annual lease price from the lessors minus the operations fee that will be taken out. So at this moment, this is the present working framework. We've had a flurry of emails in the last 36 hours confirming these dates. And I feel bad for the people who are on the back end of it who literally received a 42 email chain. But it really has been really a fervent and productive discussion, and I think we're closing in on these kind of final details. One of these dates may change, the lease term may change, but in general, this at the moment is the agreed to process that that the parties are interested in pursuing. So that's kind of the structure. I was going to move more into the application process for the board, but would this be a good time to have the parties comment on that, since I'm not a negotiating party?
Yeah, well, let's have the other negotiating parties. If you want to give any comments, you're more than welcome to.
To reflect kind of what we've come up with so far in the contract.
Come up to the table, identify yourself.
Yeah.
Thought I covered that yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard it was a stellar show.
But yesterday, your chair wasn't wired.
Yeah.
This is the bad part, public record. Kevin Cotton with Carbon Canal. Currently, as far as Carbon Canal, we've still got a couple of little things internally to work out here. We believe it's a good concept. We know it. I personally feel it's a really good concept. Again, we covered that yesterday through conservation practices. Some point in the future, we're going to end up with water that is going to be maybe in jeopardy on our water rights when we start conserving more. And this, in my mind, is a really good tool to help us protect that portion of our water right that we won't be actually using them. Boy, the legal side of this has just been, it's been a real struggle so far in my mind. I thought we'd be through it by now. We're still not. I think we're probably going to need another week to get a couple little glitches cleaned up on our end. But I think as far as Carbon Canal, we are going to support it. We're going to move forward with it. I just want to ensure there's 7 of us on our board. So far, everything we've done as far as a board in the last 10 to 15 years, we've done it as a 7-member board. And I'm just trying to make sure that everyone is on track. We're all in agreement because we represent over 300 shareholders on this company. We want to ensure that it's the best thing for every one of our shareholders. We don't want to damage anyone. We're not trying to take advantage of anybody's water rights or short anybody if they want to participate for a year. We want them to have that opportunity. Other people want 3 years. They need to have that opportunity, and that's what we're trying to work out. But personally, I feel this is a really good thing for us to move forward with, and I'm excited to be the first one truly in the state to do this. And we're kind of in a unique area because of our location to Lake Powell, and I think we're in a little bit different scenario than people on the Wasatch Front and up north. So I think we need to move forward because sometime in the future, this lower basin and upper basin, there's going to be, this drought is really bringing this to the forefront, and we're going to need all the protection and help we can get.
And I appreciate their guinea pigness with all of the legal side. That's really why I put that slide in here, because like it has been a effort.
It is, and it's created
discussion,
some different dynamics on our board that we haven't experienced so far. You know, some things have come up with board members that we've been together for a lot of years on this board, that new dynamics have kind of come out of the woodworks right here, right now, but we are getting through it, and it's just going to take a few more days to get it all wrapped up. And then when all of this starts up and all these emails start flowing back and forth, and like I told everyone yesterday, we do have an attorney on our board, and wow, he really runs that red flag up the pole. I'm the guy that's ready to sign this, and let's get going here. We'll figure the details out on down the road, but I know that's not the best way to approach it. But, so everybody be patient. If you guys will support this, I think it'll be a really good thing. And I understand, again, we're up against some big timelines if we want to try and make this work for the irrigation season of 22. So hopefully we can get this hammered out quickly and move forward here.
And it's at your pace too. You know, we want everyone, same thing with the forms. Everyone, especially with this first one, we want everyone to feel comfortable. I just get to be there.
And I think in the future, boy, we're going to see a lot of changes on these still. We're going to step into this one, and there's still going to be things. We can have 100 attorneys on this and work on it for the next 3 years, and there's still going to be these little things pop up. The first day everybody signs.
That would be the problem.
Well, yeah, if we had two.
I know.
We could get her done.
I am engaged for my project management services.
But it'll be a good thing.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle Stevens. Just a comment. I think it's good to see this type of level of enthusiasm on the part of those that will be actively participating in it. And it goes back to the slide that you showed earlier with the guinea pig. It appeared the guinea pig seemed to be quite happy.
He was reaching his, I searched for the right guinea pig picture. Didn't want a docile, inactive one. Yeah, definitely. Bill, please.
Okay, I'm Bill Butcher. I'm president of Pricer Water Users Association. I'm also chairman of Conservation District. But I just wanted to say that, you know, we're working through this process, and it has been, well, like everybody keeps saying, a process. And I was thinking, I wished I had her slide when the question came up yesterday about how to describe how the bank worked, because I stumbled through that for quite a while. That slide would have been helpful. But, you know, like Kevin, I've got shareholders to think about, and half of my shareholders, or a lot of them, are not on Carbon Canal, so I've got to make sure they're protected, because they're not dealing with this, not affected. Well, I've got to make sure they're not affected by this. So it's been a real process, but I think we all support it. We want to get this water bank done. We really like the thought of the protections that is the statute affords us. So that's basically all I had to say, but I think unless there's a question for me in particular.
I'd also like to remind the group we had a pandemic in the middle of our organizing.
Real quick. I'm Jordan Nielsen. I work for Trout Unlimited. I've been working for the last several years in the Colorado River Basin on different types of water marketing scenarios. We've done in-stream flow leases. We worked through the system conservation pilot program. And I just really think the water banking is a great next step to developing conservation measures that protect Utah water users and Utah's water rights as we approach some pretty tough negotiating scenarios in the Colorado River Basin, but also looking at other places in the state like the Great Salt Lake and issues that we're facing there. So we appreciate the board and the staff of Water Resources for all the work that has gone into this and your consideration.
No trout, Great Salt Lake.
We can probably find something to work.
That's our next project. Yeah, I just, again, you know, it's helpful to have, for me too, as the project manager, like it's easy to get caught up in what does the box say, what does the right form say, but like to hear the participation and excitement is just exciting. But back to the formal stuff. So what I did want to show you guys, so that was a little bit of a synopsis of the current working contract. You know, as you've heard, there's a couple things that we're still working out, not negatively, but just, you know, we want to make sure everyone's comfortable. And so while the parties have been negotiating the terms of this pilot project contract, we have been working in-depthly with the Division of Water Resources and the Board of Water Resources on the process for actually submitting a water bank application. And so, again, we're just, for the group, you know, we're working under one of two structures under the Act. One is a statutory bank, one is a contract bank. We're working on contract banks. These are voluntary leasing contracts between parties. We have a public entity involved as the applicant to avoid speculation. And the Act, the statute, the water banking statute has been designed to approve contract water bank applications that have been deemed complete. So it's not a substantive review of the board, but it is a review to make sure that the application meets the statutory criteria. And so a lot of our effort has been in forming processes and forms that actually reflect the statutory criteria. So just a couple of the key points in the statute that you'll see reflected in the documents. The statute requires that well, before I go there, based on our discussions this morning in the briefing in the briefing meeting, I did include a cite to 7331-106, which is the statutory authority for the Board of Water Resources to delegate responsibilities to the division. And so these slides are reflected in what we see the actual process being. The statute itself says board, but we're anticipating the board will delegate to the division certain responsibilities. So under the statute, there's a couple key elements. The date the application is received needs to be marked by the division. Their application review. The application needs to be deemed complete, and I'll go through these a little more in-depthly in a second. There's a public notice requirement. There is a public meeting requirement. That public meeting is held by the applicant. That's been kind of an interesting element to try and account for. And then just the contract banks. Yeah. Yeah. And that's because we wanted to not have the board be sitting in a position of having to be a substantive judge on someone else's, contract. And then the final step is approval or denial. If it's complete, it's approved. If it's not complete, it's deemed denied. Hopefully you don't have any that you deny. Hopefully we've got a process that walks the interested users through it. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I've broken these down into a little more steps if we want to the 5-step process of kind of how this would work in reality with a little more specifics. Would you like me to do that? Okay. So we've kind of, as a project management team, in articulating how this project is going to work, have kind of divided the necessary activities into 5 steps. 5 sections, 5 milestones with many steps underneath them. But the first one is pre-application activities. Before they even get before the board, a lot needs to happen. First thing is the local parties need to get together and basically like discuss water leasing possibilities. Then those water leasing discussions have to end in a contract that meets the criteria of the statute. And one recommendation that we've been learning through the process is that as the various parties are negotiating the contract, the parties take minutes at their meetings. So that's going to be the applicant meeting, but also, you know, as Kevin indicated, you know, they have a board. Their board should probably be taking notes or minutes of the meetings where they discuss the contract, just so there's a good record. And as you've seen, it takes a while to work out some details. So then once the parties come to a contract that it fits their understanding of how they want to lease, they need to conditionally approve the contract because it has to still come before the board to be a water bank. One recommendation that we would include is that to not have to go back if for some reason the board denies the contract, to just have the document operate as an operational document from the get-go. In the event that the board does deny the application, we've recommended the contracts have a termination clause that just says, it's good as it goes now, but if for some reason the board denies the application, it terminates. So that way you don't have to follow up with the parties afterwards. It's already built into the document itself. The other step that we actually, after our board briefing, had a great discussion with Mark on is the change application. The change application process is really supposed to be a standalone but complementary process that is the actual check on the water rights elements to make sure nobody's impaired, to make sure that distribution works. That is a separate and distinct conversation that will have to happen with the state engineer's office. We're going to recommend that interested water users initiate that conversation at the same time they are doing their contracts. And the reality is it's going to be one and the same discussion. The parties are going to be like, I have water right Y, how are we going to lease it? Water right Y would need to look like this for the change. So I think they're going to be complementary. Step 2 is you apply to the board. So you complete the contract water bank application form. The application form, among other requirements, basically asks for the applicant and some administrative information. You know, how do you contact the applicant? Who's the secondary contact, et cetera. It has several boxes that ask for a narrative description of the contract transaction. What does the governing board look like? How are you going to administer it? How are you going to terminate the contract or the bank if people don't want to participate, et cetera. Links to the minutes of the applicant's conditional approval of contract. So we want people, the public, to know, you know, that the applicant did approve it before submitting it to the application or to the board. And then 4, where to locate the applicant's public meeting notice. This is because the statute requires that. And a recommendation that we thought of is the timing on this is going to be really important that the applicant figure out. And so if it doesn't work to have a board meeting or have this a public meeting at a regular board meeting, having a special meeting for just having a public, it's not a public meeting, but it is a meeting where the contract is an agenda item. It might not be a bad idea just to have a special meeting that fits your timeline, you know, instead of trying to fit it into your existing meetings. The other things that need to be included with the application are a map and a copy of the conditionally approved water bank application. If you can get so far, it'd probably be really helpful to include a draft of your change application, just so that the board understands the water rights dynamics, but it's not a requirement under the statute. And then once you've completed the form and the ancillary materials, then you send the complete application form to the Utah Division of Water Resources, and then the Division of Staff works on completing the application process with the division, or with the applicant. Again, the statute says board, but those are going to be delegated authorities to the division. Step 3 is the Division of Water Resources reviews and produces public notice of the application. So under the statute, they need to mark the date the contract application was received. They're going to review the contract application for completeness, and we've completed some internal guidelines to assist the division in that review. They're going to mark the date the contract water bank application was deemed complete by the division. So basically, we got it on April 1, April 16th, it looks like things are looking good. April 30th, it looks like things are looking good. Within 30 days of being deemed complete, the division has to publish public notice of the receipt of a complete application, and that public notice has to include two things: that the division and the board have received a contract application or a water bank application, and it's been filed with the board, and where the person may review the application, which is essentially going to be a link to the applicant's public notice website. So you can say, this is the Conservation District is the applicant, here's the link to the applicant's public notice website, or the applicant's page on the Utah Public Notice website. And that's the public meeting element of it. They're going to hold it. So step 4, I promise we'll get there, is the applicant has the public meeting. So the applicant notices a public meeting, notices a meeting for public comment on the water bank application. They hold the meeting. They collect any public comment that may come, and they have to take some minutes on that. If the applicant votes to amend and resubmit the water bank contract, if the public comment merits it, and that's in the determination of the applicant. So you could have, neighbor Joe say, I don't like this, and we could say, why? And they say, it's because I don't like X, Y, and Z on the board. And you're gonna be like, that's not a reason to amend this contract. And so the likelihood that a contract will be amended based on public comment is going to be limited to whether or not the applicant thinks it merits. If someone brings something that the applicant thinks merits amending the contract, they can do so. If there's no comments received at the applicant's public meeting, or they can incorporate the change, or they can, address the comments, then they can document the comments received and then execute the final approved contract. Once they do that, if it's ratified, the next step is send a division the notice that they had their meeting. So we've completed our process. We've completed the requirement to have a public meeting. And then basically in that notice, you say, we've had our meeting. Here's our minutes or our notes that we received, our minutes that we took from the meeting. Here's our final contract, a statement that says that we've completed all the requirements, and a request that the board approve the application because they've completed the requirements. And again, these are recommendations. This is a recommendation to try and help the public understand the process. So there's a lot of steps in here, but it's to help the public. And then 5, the Board of Water Resources reviews, Board of Water Resources contract water bank application approval or denial process. The division will prepare a staff report finding that the applicant has completed the contract water bank application, and the board may act on its duty to make a recommendation that the board may act on its duty to approve the application. You can vote to find that the application meets the requirements, is complete, and approve the contract water bank. And then I have in here established procedure for newly approved water bank for submitting annual reporting requirements. They need to know that they're annual reporting requirements, and that's just it. So my 5/25 steps to filing for a water bank application. We have one more slide, and then we think we're done. Based on our communications this morning, I do think what we may do is add a couple, resubmit our documents for the December board meeting that includes a approval form on the end of the form. And on the screen is a format that we stole from a municipal approval that is something that could probably work really well for the board. It's just a final signature block saying, we've now completed the process, here's how we voted, the board can approve. And I think that's it. Yeah. So, got a lot going on. But I do think that we are coalescing into what seems to be, a process that does reflect the statute, that does reflect the activities that are happening, and hopefully will eventually become clear to the public.
I might make a comment, Randy Crozier. As you're doing your contracts, the cleaner the better. I know it takes time, but I guarantee clean contracts up front saves a lot of grief down the road. So don't, make sure you get them clean, because it just will solve you a lot of grief.
Thank you, Emily. Lots is going on, and there's been a lot of time and effort put into this. We appreciate all the efforts everybody's making, and I think we're all on the same page that where this is brand new and a lot of unknowns. We just want to make sure that we do it right and up front, and I think making good progress. So we can anticipate that for our December meeting that we'll have the application form ready for.
Yes, so we probably will resubmit 3 forms to you for the December meeting. One will be a modified contract bank, water bank application. So the form with the boxes, and we probably will add one or, the form at the end for the board to sign. And then in looking at some of the language based on Mr. Crozier's comments, we might change some of the language in the board signature form as well. And then the second thing we're going to submit is internal board guideline or division guidelines. And we may tweak those a little bit based on our discussion today too. And the third document is this 5-step process, which is intended to be more of a publicly facing document. I think generally that all the concepts are there, but we might change some of the language to be a little more clear. But December would be the board meeting. And then depending on the parties, we'll probably would like to, if everyone's ready, submit an application, sometime in December-ish. Yeah. So we have to wait till you approve the forms, and then we'll submit. So, yeah.
Board members, any questions while got Emily on? I guess her seat's the wired seat now. Any questions for Emily?
No.
Or any of them?
See, it's going to be smooth sailing.
Now, as far as in visiting with Randy Staker, there were no public comments received on this particular item. We're not going to take any action today. So, but there were no public comments received. Anyone in the audience that would have any comments, further comments than what we've had? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, next item on the agenda will be to adopt schedule for the 2022 meetings. And in the board packet, it had some proposed dates that we need to read. It was proposed that we, see if I can find it here, and here we are. It's proposed that we have for 2022 a board meeting on January 27th, March 23rd, May 5th, June 16th, August 4th, September 15th, October 27th, and December 6th. Any discussion, board members, on any of those that you know right now? Okay. There were no public comments received on this proposed schedule. Anyone that's here today have any comments on that proposed schedule for 2022? Okay, we'll entertain a motion then to accept the proposed meeting dates for 2022.
Jim Lemon, I would make the motion that we accept the proposed dates for 2022.
Okay, Jim made a motion. Do we have a second on the motion? Randy seconded the motion. Prior to taking a vote, any further discussion or clarification on the motion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, voting's been unanimous of adopting the schedule for the 2022 meetings. Next item on the agenda, director's report. Sandis?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I just am really excited to see all the water banking stuff going forward. Got to work a lot with Emily over a few years when the legislation was being drafted and being a part of the road tours and getting around and talking about it. So it's exciting to see it moving along. That's awesome. So good work on that. Just right off, our water supply conditions for our start of our water year are phenomenal. I saw a statistic we're 776% of normal in our snow water equivalent. So it's, you know, we're not usually seeing this much snow by this time, but we'll take it. I mean, we still have a long ways to go to see what the rest of the winter will bring, but it definitely puts us in a great spot for our runoff next year and improving our runoff efficiency. As many of you know, we put our water resources plan out for public comment. And we did have our open house, our virtual open house on October 20th, and that went well. We had about 25 people in the public, in the virtual public that attended, lots of good questions. So yes, that was a good event, and that public comment period closes November 15th. Thank you, Todd. November 15th. So, and then once we receive all the public comments, we will go through them and work to address them, get the plan updated, and then get that out for final publication. So that's exciting. Last week, there were a number of interim legislative meetings. There was an infrastructure and general government appropriation subcommittee that I presented on Whites Valley was the request. I broadened that a little bit to talk about water supply and the importance of reservoirs, answered some good questions about Great Salt Lake and the impacts of the Bear River development, and talked about the project kind of timeline on, you know, long-term, how long that's needed. So that was a good meeting. At the Natural Resource Ag and Environment Appropriations Subcommittee meeting, Executive Director Brian Steed, as well as Kim Shelley, who's the Executive Director at the Department of Environmental Quality, and Commissioner Butters from the Utah Department of Agriculture, presented on the ARPA funds, so the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And the legislature, as you all know, appropriated $100 million to the Department of Natural Resources to us, and then we kind of established, they laid out a plan of separating those funds. In general, it's about what we had talked about before. It is slightly different, so I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. There is still about 50 million. There is still 50 million that's kind of being set aside for that secondary metering that we will administer. I've worked with Joel and his staff to get some kind of guidelines on how that process could look. So we will get that sent out to you probably by beginning of next week. We can get kind of that draft out, and that'll probably be on the next board meeting for your, as long as the legislature doesn't have any critiques to it and you don't have any tweaks to it, that we'll look to have that on the next board agenda for your approval. And then there is 25 million that's set aside for drinking water projects that is going to DEQ. And then this is where it kind of shifted. There was 25 million set aside for agricultural optimization projects, and they changed that just a little bit. There's now 20 million going to agricultural optimization projects, and that 5 million is now is kind of slated to go to some Great Salt Lake specific projects, potentially with helping with the berm to regulate the salinity, those types of projects. So that, I just want to make sure that you were updated on that. Then Brian and I also presented at the Natural Resource Ag and Environment Interim Committee on Wednesday of last week on drought and water conservation. So those were two good meetings, had lots of good questions. I think it was the first time it was Chair Sandel who was, when Brian walked up, he was smiling, and Chair Sandel was like, well, it looks like you have some good news for us. It's the first time we've seen you smiling talking about a drought report. So that was, it was a good meeting and good to talk about, you know, all the great precipitation that we have had. And then finally, just wanted to give you all a heads up. We have been working with a number of stakeholders to kind of figure out if we should submit an application for a BOR, so Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Basin study. And so this is a study that helps to kind of look at a whole basin area, kind of figure out the supply and the demand, and can potentially, if we got got the grant, it would be, it's not necessarily a grant monetarily, but technical assistance. So we are looking at putting out, well, there's two kind of phases. One is, an application for this basin study, and then there's also an option that they have to do a plan of study, and that's kind of what we're looking for in the Great Salt Lake Basin, to try to really understand, what scale would that study be, how much detail, who would be the stakeholders. So a lot of effort will still need to go into that. Our understanding that should be open sometime the beginning of November and close mid-December. So our plan is with some of the stakeholders that we're talking with, submitting a plan of study application, but it'll give us time to submit a larger basin study application when that opens again, probably next year. So just wanted to give you all a heads up about that as well.
Great. That's a little more upbeat than the report, at least on water supply last time, isn't it? Yeah, appreciate that. And I would just like to, again, give appreciation to the division staff. Very busy. People are doing a lot of work. The staff members are. Appreciate your staff and all that they're doing on everything.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing them. They do incredible work, and it's really exciting to work alongside them, and it's great.
Craig or Jay, do you have anything you'd like to bring up at this meeting today?
We're just observing.
Just observing. Yeah, see if we're doing it right. Craig was on this board for a long time. He knows the inner and outer workings. And Jay knows it too. They both do. Yeah.
Oh, can we get you a mic?
Grab a mic for him.
Strong's Law. Remember what Strong's Law was? When you conserve water, something has to die. And it's a true law. It works. And the more water you conserve in the Salt Lake Basin, the lower the Salt Lake will be. That's what's going to die. So as you conserve water that used to go into the Salt Lake, use it somewhere else, you're going to dry it up. So how does that fit into your conservation efforts? What you're going to do, the way I see it, you'll eventually take that conserved water, cut off a piece, and put it back in the lake. Now you've chased your tail. You've funded all these conservation projects. You've dried it up. Now you assign it back. Anyway, something to think about.
Appreciate that. Craig comes from a long lineage of I used to call them water buffaloes. Craig's dad, Gene, was Mr. Water in Emery County, wasn't he? Yeah, and Jay, you replaced Gene as general manager of the Emery County Water District, didn't you? Was Gene the one you replaced, or?
Actually, I replaced. There was another manager between me. My dad was the first manager. I replaced him.
So both Jay and Craig come from a long lineage of water buffaloes. We appreciate both of you, and thank you for the tour yesterday. That was great. I think that Juliet's just now thawing out from her experience on top of Joe's Valley Reservoir.
I know, I was worried I was going to blow away, but.
Yeah. Okay. Board members, anything else you'd like to discuss before we adjourn?
One little comment. Any of you ever heard of a water dog? Well, they're actually a fish with gills and 4 legs. I come across some of them here a while back, and You know, at first I thought they were salamanders, but they're what they call a water dog, and these particular ones was 12 to 14 inches long, and it's kind of odd to see the fish pack his lunch and go across the mud flat. So it is, so fish do actually pack their lunch box and move elsewhere.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Before we do, well, go ahead and let's take a motion.
Okay, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair. I move that we adjourn and everyone drives home safely.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion? Okay, Jim, motion and a second that we adjourn and drive home safely, and I guess that means we need to obey the speed limits, is that? Was that sounded like part of the motion? Move with the traffic. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion adjourns. It's now, what is it? 12:22 by my watch. That's the first time I've done that in 2 years.
Yeah, like that felt good.
That felt good.
Good.